Welcome to the Week 6 recap, folks. Holy shit, what a week. Week 6, 6 games, 5 out of the 6 could be argued as being down to the wire enough to be part of a game of the week. I mean, we definitely have a hierarchy here. But we'll jump right into it because it was a wacky ass week, both in real and in fantasy. I'm not too happy with either one. My team lost in fantasy, and of course the Bucks lost in a really shitty game against the Steelers. But that shit happens. So, getting into it, game of the week number 1 has to go to Carlos and Lewis. I am happy as hell, first of all, and I think we should start with this. Start with the good. Lewis gets his first win, and it came by the skin of his teeth. He had to tie Carlos at 95 after being down 18 going into Monday night. That's what the story should be, is that Lewis gets his first win, and it went basically into overtime of overtime, going into the Monday night game, making a comeback, goes to bench points. He wins with the bench points 15 and a half to 12, 3.5 bench point difference. And that is what gets him his first win. And who knows if it might be his only win, because he's still having an issue scoring points, obviously, even though this week, 95 was not the lowest scoring week. I don't know who had it, but yeah, it was a rough week for some, me included. But as much as we want the headline to be about Lewis getting his first win, it's unavoidable, folks. Carlos, for the second year in a row, has lost via tie to bench points. Now, you can't make this shit up. You can't. If something happens once, it's an aberration. If it's twice, you have to look at it. It's twice. If this happens again next year, it's a pattern. All right. And one could already argue it is with how it's going. Now, it's a little bit different than last year. Last year, he went into Monday night knowing he needed bench points, and he underestimated. It was a Titans game, I believe, and I forget who he was playing. But he basically lost that game with his own bad decision making. He really did. This year, I'll give him a little bit of a pass here, but it still sucks nonetheless. I mean, he was up by 18. He had Sutton left to fend off Herbert and Palmer. He got 3 points out of Sutton. Denver once again had an underwhelming game, but Sutton did not get his. Herbert got just enough. Palmer got just enough. Tied him, went to bench points, lost by 3.5. I mean, I know what Seed's saying. You got to plan for these things, but, I don't know if Sajid even going into Monday night would upend his bench if he were up by, 18 points, had a player left. Those types of things are a little bit harder to gauge and it's easier to look at that in hindsight and say, oh, I shoulda, woulda, coulda, or you shoulda, woulda, coulda. But it still is a tough fucking pill to swallow. It sucks, dude. And it does suck because as we'll get into some more numbers in a little bit, changing things up a little bit here and how I'm staging this as we get into bye weeks and things that skew numbers. So I don't want to go over things that don't mean as much. And we also want to look at how our playoff picture is shaping up and our upcoming schedules, things like that. But Carlos doesn't have a bad team. Alex said it, and it's true because if you look at it overall, and we're going to get into the power rankings, but Carlos is the 6th highest scoring team. So it really does come down to some bad luck sometimes, whether it's injuries, who you're up against. I mean, if you're the second highest scoring team every week or third highest scoring team, but you're playing the top every week, you're fucked. So, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have at least a good core. He can make a comeback, and if he comes back from 1-5, that's going to make news. And I'll tell you what, we have more than just one 1-5 team who can make waves. Kyle is 1-5. Unfortunately, got the bad end of the division sweep from both ends here, from me and Alex, losing this past game, which we'll get into in a bit. But he's scoring a lot too. Kyle has a good team. So let's get into the second game of the week. Joel and Jeff, the two J's. This one, another division game. Jeff thought he had it won by half a point. And yeah, that defense must have gotten a point adjusted there. He lost by half a point. He lost overnight. So while at least Carlos and Lewis knew what the end result was, actually, I'm not sure. I think that might have adjusted a little bit too or something, because it was a close game all the way through, and you have to hold your breath until you wake up in the morning. Unfortunately, didn't work out for Jeff that way. Jeff still has a great team, leading, winning his division, but he got swept by Joel. That could be a problem come later in seeding if they end up having close or even records. Um, and not only that, but Jeff missed an opportunity to join Saeed with the best record. Who would have thought Saeed and Jeff would have possibly been at 5-1 together? But instead, it's only going to be Saeed who has that record. The Broncos D was the difference here. That's who Jeff had to try to get him out of a hole going into the end there. He thought he had 7, he got 6. He was half a point short. I will say, though, Jeff, I think he kind of deserved this one. You benched Tom Brady for Geno. And I know Tom Brady did not have that good of a game. And I can almost I actually can understand your thinking because everybody thought Brady was going to have a very good game this week against the Steelers. But even though he didn't have that good of a game, if you would have played him, you would have won. So, uh, sucks for you. Fuck the Saints. Fuck Marshawn Lattimore, by the way. Game of the week 3. Alex, 140. Kyle, 137. This was a 3-point game. Came down to McManus. If the Broncos would have won by a field goal, it would have been another either tie game if it was a 30, and then it would have gone to Alex pretty easy. He had an edge in bench points there. Or if he got a 40-yard field goal or more, then Kyle would have won. That's how close this was. If the Broncos would have won in overtime with a field goal, there's a very good chance that Kyle would have probably won as well because McManus was on. He got 13 points. He just didn't get the 17 points he needed. And 17 points for a kicker is high. So that would have been a good game for him. But unfortunately, he falls to 1-5. Alex improves to 4-2. Kyle has a steep hill to climb. He's been swept by both me and Alex, but he is not out of it because he is scoring well as well. If Carlos at 1-5 is 6th overall in scoring, Kyle is 5th. So he's doing even better. So watch out for these teams. Just because they're losing early on does not mean they have a bad team or that they're going to keep sucking. You do not want to play these guys when it comes to crunch. I'm glad I'm done playing Kyle, but Carlos is not going to be easy. No matter what his record may look like and what jokes we may crack, he's got a pretty good roster there. And especially with Robbie Anderson being traded to Arizona, you never know. It's a dart throw, but he could do better. I mean, it's hard to do much worse than he was doing in Carolina. So even if he averages, 5-6 points a game, that's still 2 or 3 more than in Carolina. So moving on, game of the week 4. I put me and Gus on this one. I mean, it was over by Sunday night because it was Sunday Night Football that it came down to. So he did have Mike Williams, but he only got him a couple points, which hurts even worse. I would have rather having a boom of a game would help me in another league. 1, 2, I would have been thinking, what if Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown just got one last touchdown together? Because that's really what it was. If they would have gotten one more touchdown or some more yards, would have been a little bit more of an offensive game in the second half, and they didn't cool off as much, I might have pulled this one out. It wasn't a high-scoring 97-90. Sunday Night Football was the difference, and then the lack of involvement there for Mike Williams going against Patrick Surtain in that fierce Broncos secondary was really what did it. Next up, this one could be almost a game of the week 5, even though it really wasn't close. It did come down to Monday night. Sam 123, Manny 107. It was actually Manny winning by 6 going into the Monday night game. He assumed that it was already over because Sam had Russ and Judy. He only got 22 points from both of them combined. Not a lot. And I know that it basically ended up being, not too much of one to sweat by the end of it. With how they've been playing and that offense, it really wasn't a given. And he won comfortably. But, Sam may be, putting out that bravado, but even he knew that he had to hold his breath a little bit, make sure it wasn't one of those horrible, horrible games by Russ. But pretty much by halftime, it was over. So that is all 5 of the games that could have been games of the week. Remember, the first couple of weeks, we didn't have much of any. We've had multiple each of the past couple of weeks. And then Sajid gets to $10 this week. 153 to 115 over Hector, improves to 5-1, leading the pack, going from worst to first so far. Who's leading them? And what's the story? Burrow, Hill, and Eckler. 41, 30, and 25. That's 96 total between 3 people, folks. That's averaging 32 points per top player that he has. Hill is carrying on no matter what, and Tua comes back soon. That's scary. JT comes back soon. That's scary. So he's got a fucking hell of a team. He really did some work. So good for him. He got Burrow and Eckler from me. I still believe in my crew, and I hope that I get a chance to prove that against him. I know that I will be soon. I believe actually, let me see. I play seed. Nope, it's coming up a little bit later on. Going to be a hell of a match though, because he definitely got some fierce starters. If he doesn't have any injury issues, you're going to have some problems with Sajid. Everybody already is, and he hasn't even gotten rolling yet with all the new guys that he has. So moving on from there, what do we have? I'm going to look at the current standings and seeds. Okay, now I know you can look this up technically on your own, but we have a little bit different rules, and that already has come into play. For example, seed is first. He would get the only bye, the same way that in the NFL works. Top seed only gets bye. Then it lists Alex and Sam next. Sam actually has tiebreaker over Alex, and they're not in the same division, so that one game does matter here. So it's Sam second seed, Alex third, then Jeff fourth, Hector fifth, sixth is Manny. Seventh says it would be me. I would get the last spot, but Gus is eighth, and he actually just won. So he has tiebreaker. We're not same division anymore, so we don't go to points or anything like that. So he actually would be the last team in. I'd be first team out. And then Joel, Kyle, Lewis, and Carlos is how it would round out. So looking next at the power rankings, it's definitely a little bit different. Alex is still tops. He's scoring about 157 a game. Again, he's regressing towards the mean a little bit, but that's because of the high point totals he had at first. Sajid has plus one. He's at 145 now. Sam has gone down one spot to 142. Jeff is at 137.7, almost 138. Kyle is at 137. Carlos at 134, Manny at 127. So again, right around that 130 area is that average between the top half and the bottom half in our league. Straddling that 130 is Carlos on the north end of it at 134, Manny on the south end at 127. Hector 125.7, me at 125.2, then Gus at 118, Joel at 116, and Lewis at 101.8. He's creeping towards less than 100 points a game, so hopefully he can get it going. Maybe he'll get a second win, and maybe he will crawl right out of last place. Although technically speaking, he's not in last because he'll tiebreaker over Carlos. But a lot of football left to go. And speaking of a lot of football, what do we have coming up? Week 7. All right. So I am playing Sam. This is a battle of the buys. I got a lot of buys. Top players for Sam have buys. Talking about Diggs, Gabe Davis, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, even Cooper Kupp. So we'll see whose backups win against whose backups. It's preseason material right here. Right now I'm favored by 0.2. 0.2 points. That's it. Gus versus Kyle. Kyle is favored by 13.5. Gus trying to improve over 500. Kyle trying to claw back to 500. Manny versus Alex. Again, we have no divisional games here anymore. Manny versus Alex. Alex is favored by 17. Lewis is missing one person in his starting lineup, but right now is still the underdog to Joel by 37 points. Hector and Carlos. Carlos is favored by 28 points. 1-5 favored by 28 over Hector at 4-2. And we got Sajid favored by 27 over Jeff right now at 4-2, but Jeff is missing two people in his starting lineup. That's going to be a heavyweight fight. 5-1 versus 4-2. We really did miss out. That could have been a 5-1 versus 5-1. Jeff coming off a narrow victory. Sajid coming off the highest score of the week. But Jeff is trying to even their records and see if he can maybe get a stranglehold on that top overall seed, which he might have by the end of this week, going into the second half of the season. What I probably will do is starting after next week, I will go through and go through the playoff seedings a little bit more detail. I won't be able to do scenarios. It's way too far out for that. I don't have the time or the patience to do that shit. Probably won't be able to until about 2 weeks out, honestly, just because of how many scenarios exist in our league. But at least we can get an idea of how it's starting to shape up, because we do have divisions that are in play. We have 7 seeds. All of those things do come to matter, and buys are hitting heavy. A lot of good teams on buy. The Vikings, the Rams, the Eagles, and the Bills are the 4 teams, and there's a lot of good players on those teams. So this is going to be an interesting week. Might be another low-scoring week. We'll see what the high score. This week the high score is 153. That's not that high. We've had the 200s before. So I do want to just do a recap of the top scoring positions. I'm going to do this by average per game, which is going to be a little bit different as we go because of the buys and players that have missed games. I did make it a little bit different, like kicker. There was one player had a average because he only played one game. I'm not going to count that, but multiple games. So trying to account for the buys and, players that have missed games but still playing, high quality football when they're in. So at QB top 3, Josh Allen scoring 34 points a game, Lamar Jackson 28, and Hurts at 27 points a game. Running back, Eckler 23.5, Chubb 23, Saquon 22. Wide receiver, Diggs 26, Kupp 25.7, and Tyreek Hill 23. Kelsey is tops for tight ends, 21.5, Andrews 18.8, Hill 15.8. Now I know we don't have Taysom Hill, that is 15.8. I know we don't have a tight end position. We have flex. So keep in mind, though, that Kelsey at 21.5 still scores less than the third best wide receiver, just to give you an idea where that's at. As far as flex rankings go, it's Diggs, Kupp, and Eckler. So the top running back is the third highest flex. Top defenses, very tightly packed here. Philadelphia, 13.3 a game. Buffalo, 13.2. And New England, 12.7. And as far as kickers go, highest average, really, everybody that's played is the Tampa Bay kicker, Suckup, 10.3 a game. Now, Carlson with the Vegas Raiders has 12.2, but I believe he missed a game, maybe two. So it's a little bit skewed. I listed him as second. And then we have a tie between the Baltimore and Dallas kickers, Justin Tucker and Maher, at 9.7 a game. So just to give you kind of an idea of the top scores by position, by our league rules, just the top 3 there. So good luck coming up week 7. It's going to be a rough one, I know, for me, possibly for others because of players that you have on bye. But the good news is those people that are hit hard on buys this week will not be getting hit as hard as others in other weeks. So look forward to that at the very least. Have a good weekend, everybody. Peace, punch, cap and fucking crunch.